What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Medium Large Sports Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by former Dodgers general manager Ned Colletti, the man that this week of all weeks gets to tell people he drafted Clayton Kershaw and extended Clayton Kershaw. So, Ned, we appreciate your time this morning.
Hey, Jeff, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
I want to get to some Clayton Kershaw stories. That was the original reason I reached out. But then the Dodgers of the last 24 hours have happened. And so as a former GM, I've got questions that I'd love to get your probably unique perspective on. And I guess I'll start here. Can you think of a time where there was a team that you oversaw that was comparable in any way to this, where I just think of a team that is so obviously talented and that for whatever reason over 8 or 9 months, they just cannot seem to get everything clicking all at once?
Well, I don't think I ever had teams as talented. I certainly didn't have the payroll, nowhere near the payroll. So, I mean, this is a very, very talented team. You have teams that go through different things during the course of a year. If you go back to, I think, 2013, people thought Don Mattingly was going to get fired. We were hovering around 400. Hanley got hurt during the WBC. Puig hadn't quite made it yet, and it was chaos for a little while. And then we had, believe it or not, we had that big fight with Arizona, with that Zach Greinke was involved in, and suddenly we won like 45 out of the next 60 or something.
Yeah.
So, things can change in an instant. It's been an interesting season, no doubt. I still think the Dodgers are in the best spot of any team, and I guess you probably want to get into the bullpen here at some point in time.
Yes.
But I'll let you go from there.
The thing specifically about the bullpen, there's so many different angles, but the one that I was like, a question that I can ask Ned Colletti that he can give me unique perspective on is, what's going through the front office's mind as they watch these relievers? I'm specifically thinking of guys like Tanner Scott, Kirby Yates, Blake Trinan, that they've gone out and paid big money to, which, we know Andrew Friedman has said he doesn't like paying relievers. He doesn't like trading for relievers. And then he goes and does it. And these are the three veteran guys that you feel like you're supposed to be able to count on. Jack Dreyer, you hope it works out, Vesia, but like these are the guys you're supposed to. And here we are with 5 games left in the season. And those three feel like you can't trust maybe you could trust them the least.
Well, Andrew's right about the relievers. The relievers are like the stock market. I mean, depending on what day it is, they're going to be up or they're going to be down. Probably the most unpredictable group on any team is your bullpen, from year to year, from week to week, sometimes from game to game. If they were really consistent in what they did, they'd be starting, right?
Yeah.
But they have that waiver to them, and from time to time. Even the best have their tough weeks. But as I look at it, I think I don't have any inside info to what the thought process is. I think they're looking to see if they can get Tanner Scott lined up, if they can get him to get some confidence and to be effective. I think they're looking at different guys that they had penciled in as the season started to do that role. That said, if they don't think they can do that role, doesn't mean they won't be on the roster. But I think that they have enough, and this may be a little bit weird to hear, but I think they have enough starting pitching to figure out how to close games and to get through series. When you get to the playoffs, it's not like the regular season where you just line guys up to start. And this is their day, and this is what they're going to do. And, you're going to see this guy on Tuesday, and then 5 or 6 days later, and it just keeps spinning in that direction. The playoffs are far different. It's buy every out you can. Get every out you can, however you can get it. So when you make a list of the Dodgers, the pitching staff, starters, relievers, when you make a list of that group and you put, let's say that you use the word trust. Who do you trust?
Yeah.
Who do you trust in a tough spot? When you make that list, you've got numerous choices. Now, is the bullpen different than starting a game? There's no doubt. But you do have choices. And, are you going to see a guy that's made 20-plus starts this year come in the 4th or the 5th inning? Yeah, you might. Well, you're going to see a guy that's made 20 to 25 starts this year come in the 7th and maybe give you the next 3? Yeah, you might. That's how it can happen. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not saving a guy for what's our rotation going to look like in November? You're not saving anybody for anything. You're trying to get outs. You're trying to win games. Postseason is all about winning games, winning as many as you can, as quick as you can, any way that you can. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of their starting depth pitching out of the pen. I wouldn't be surprised to see a back, one of those games where somebody gives you 3 or 4, and the next guy comes in and gives you 3 or 4.
Yeah.
One of those. You got lefties, you got righties, you got good combination, you got varying stuff, you got varying arm slots. Hardly anybody is the same arm slot. Hardly anybody has the same stuff. So I would just be looking at the quality we've got of the guys we really trust. And you know what? If you can't put Tanner Scott on that list, maybe you can put him on a certain situation to get you 3 outs, maybe in the 5th, maybe in the 6th. Who knows? It doesn't matter. Roles go out the window, and it's how do you get the outs.
So, yeah, I mean, and that's one of the interesting dialogue points that has come up of late is this idea of, okay, if you don't trust, I mean, last night they have a 4-0 lead. They need 9 outs. They can't get them. And they went to Dreyer, Vesia, 2 of the guys that I would say are at the top of the trust tree right now.
Yep.
And Vesia got lucky. Dreyer gave up 2 runs. Enriquez, who's been pretty good, and then Tanner Scott. So I think one thing people are asking is, okay, you're going into a 3-game wild card series. You've got 6 starters that you like going all the way down to Sheehan and Kershaw. If you were in charge, would you be strongly considering how many outs can Ohtani and Kershaw get me in game 1? And how many outs can Snell and Sheehan get me in game 2? And how many outs can, Yamamoto and Glasnow get me in game 3? And just say, like, forget the bullpen. Like, I'm going to try and get 24 outs in each of these 3 games with 2 starters.
Well, I mean, that's what I was just saying. That would be part of my thought process. You kind of throw the roles out the window. You do consider that, okay, somebody's maybe never pitched out of relief or hardly's pitched out of relief. So you're going to have the conversation with them. Hey, you may be getting up, an hour and a half into this game and asking to give us 3 innings. So as we prepare you, how much time do you think you need? So it may not be a starting pitcher that the other team, Dodgers got a 1 or 2 run lead in the 5th. The other team gets the first 2 guys on, a walk, a hit batter. So the command is starting to get a little bit wonky on the starter. You can't really maybe get a starting pitcher up that quick. Yeah. But could you say this is your last inning and to the starter and get somebody up as the Dodgers come to bat and let that pitcher who's usually a starter get enough throws in, get hot, and come in? Yeah. And some guys, coming in with a short warm-up and coming in with runners on base is an adjustment for any starting pitcher. But if you can manage it where it's the beginning of an inning and it's clean and they have enough time to get ready, it's all in at that point in time. Yeah. You may get to that point when we'll run the scenario again. You got a couple guys on in the 5th inning, and you got a 1-run lead, and your starting pitcher is starting to teeter a little bit. I mean, maybe that's a Vesia move. Maybe that's a Tanner Scott move. Who knows? Maybe that's a move of somebody who matches up well with those next 2 or 3 hitters to get you through that, to bridge it to the next. That's how my thought process would be. And then you go to Glasnow, or you go to Kersh, or you go to somebody that has had the time to warm up and is coming in with a clean inning. At some point in time, whether it's the 6th or the 1st, if you've had enough time to warm up and there's nobody on base and you're starting clean and it's the playoffs, I don't think that people are going to be too much like, well, I've never done this before. Yeah. I don't know that I can do this. All these guys were brought here because they're talented, above average, because they have above average compete, and because they've won championships or they've been very close and they know what it takes. So, I think that they are in the best spot of any team in baseball right now. Teams are losing starting pitching. The Phillies have lost Zach Wheeler for quite a while. Woodruff is on the shelf. Teams, guys are getting hurt. That's what always happens. Dodger guys got hurt back in April and May. But, look at how good Snell's been. Who's been better than Blake Snell in the entire game? I don't know anybody. So you're in a better spot than you may think, even though we take it game to game and we get nervous and wrapped up about, oh, geez, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? Hey, they got a lot of good pitching. They'll get to figure out different roles for different guys, maybe.
You mentioned something earlier that I think has been interesting to watch as it relates to a guy like Tanner Scott. They have given him every opportunity to get things right. And yet here we are, the magic number is 3. There's 6 games to go last night, and they go back to Tanner Scott. Like, when you're in the front office, how do you balance at the end of a season? Like, we're now late September. We've given this guy every opportunity to get things back on the rails and yet there's still a week and a half left. Like, what if he goes out there last night and finds it? What if he goes out there tonight and finds it?
That's
like,
the point.
How do you balance those things, knowing that, like, you need to win these games to win the division, and at the same time, you've got aspirations that are bigger than just winning the division?
Well, the division getting tightened to a game and a half does change the thought process. If it was 4.5 right now, that was basically a cinch or a clinch already. Then you've got all the time in the world. Now you got a little bit more precarious approach, I think. Last night was a pivotal game for that. It cost them almost half their lead, in the West. So you may have to rethink that a little bit as to your next foray into Tanner Scott. Maybe they have a 4-run lead tonight with Blake pitching.
Yeah.
And so, if he can go back to back, maybe that's it. But see, it's a little bit of a question when your lead is down to what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Arizona, we know they've got a good offense. We know some of those guys can really pitch. They got San Diego this weekend. They're still mathematically in this thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So, they're going to be doing everything they can. Seattle, which is where the Dodgers go on after Thursday's day game, they have a chance to clinch their division today, which is huge for them. They've also got a home field advantage as you look deeper down into it with the Yankees, perhaps, where one of those teams is going to have the home field if they get past their first series. So there's competition still to be played, but you have a little bit to lose by running somebody out there that hasn't been successful. But if you had enough of a lead, you have nothing to lose by running somebody out there to try and find their way and to try and get enough confidence to do it. Tanner, I don't know Tanner, but I'm assuming that the confidence is not,
sounds bad.
Like Snell's confidence right now.
Yeah. One last question on this, and then we'll get to Kershaw.
Yeah.
The Dodgers bullpen, we talk about all these names that they have. The nice thing is, once you get to the postseason, it's a lot easier to say to a guy like Tanner Scott, who might be struggling, or Kirby Yates or whoever, and say, like, hey, today, this isn't like, we know what your role has been. We know what the name on the back of your jersey says. We know what your contract says. But now all the chips are down. And so we've got to go with the guys who are actually performing. I imagine on one hand, that conversation is easier with veterans in the postseason, and it's mandatory if you want to keep winning. And at the same time, as down bad as Tanner Scott might be, or Blake Trinan might be, or Kirby Yates might be, I imagine it's still hard to look those guys in the face and say, either you're not going to be on the postseason roster at all because we're going to go get Ben Kasparius, a younger guy who's not necessarily proven, but who has actually pitched well, or, hey, your inning is no longer the 9th, it's now the 5th. Like, how do those conversations go over come October?
Well, I think when no conversation when you're demoting anybody should start the day of the conversation. All these things have been probably discussed at length going forward, to the crossroads of who's on your first round schedule, right? Who's on your first round roster. But I don't think that they sign players who don't know what the objective is.
Yeah.
And don't know what they're supposed to do. Are guys going to have their feelings hurt a little bit? Yeah, but you know what? At some point in time, who cares? Would you rather have a really happy clubhouse and everybody feeling good and get boxed in 3 games? Nobody wants to do that. Not even the guy that's getting his feelings hurt.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a very professional group. I think they do their due diligence with who they bring in, their health, their analytics, their scouting, all those things. And they know why they're here. This group is here to win the World Series. The way the franchise is built and the success that it's had for a long time now, the month of October writes its history.
Yeah.
And so, hey, however you're going to win, you're going to win. They used to say this, a little hockey analogy. Scotty Bowman, the tremendous coach for many teams that won probably the second most Stanley Cups of anybody in the history of the sport. He was the head coach of many good teams. And they used to say his players hated him 364 days a year. And on day 365, they picked up their Stanley Cup championship ring.
Yeah.
So you got to let that stuff go. Dave Roberts, phenomenal communicator. You see it all the time. A player's manager in some ways, but not somebody that's going to do something that is going to jeopardize the club. And it's a collaborative effort with Andrew and his group and Dave and his group. So, I think that players know where they're at. And a player may be the last one to figure out where their talent level has been of late.
Yeah.
Everybody else may see it before they do. That happens quite a bit. But I think at the end of the day, people know what the organization's about, what the goals are, what they're trying to do, where their history will be written. And they're going to do the best they can and put the best people in the best spots to succeed. One of the great traits of great leadership is putting people in a spot to succeed.
Yeah. Speaking of great players, let's shift gears, and I want to talk to you about Clayton Kershaw. He, of course, announces that he's going to be retiring at the end of the year. Were you surprised to hear that, or were you kind of feeling like this might be the last run?
I think as the season began, I thought that this would be it. But then as well as he pitched, I thought, you know what? And as good as he says he's been feeling physically, I thought, you know what? Maybe there's one more year in there.
Yeah.
But, so in some ways, I guess maybe 10 or 15%, I'm surprised, but 85% is, I think, of the entire picture. It's been a great run. It's quoted, it's kind of like, as they say, it's time. He has, I don't know what else to accomplish. I mean, he's one of the greats of our generation, one of maybe the greatest of all time in that conversation.
Yeah.
And, having drafted him and I admit having sent him down early in his career, which every once in a while when we communicate, he reminds me a little bit of that. But, it was to give him a chance to see where he was at and to know how high the bar was. And if you look back to his early starts, a lot of pitches, not a lot of innings, a lot of ball one, ball two, a lot of falling behind. A few years ago, he either set the record or set a massive standard for your strikeout to walk ratio.
Yeah.
But if you look back to the first couple of years, it was almost 2-1, which really isn't going to get you very far. So he was the best, and he was not only the best, but when he was the best, he tried to be better than the best and kept going and going and going and competing and competing and competing. But just a special person on the field, off the field, family. He and Ellen have done so much good work in the community, in the world's community. Proud to have known him and proud to have watched his career develop. And even through the tough times, some of the playoffs were tough. I was sitting in the seat when we had some of those tougher ones.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for lack of effort. And in some cases, some people may think it was a situation of too much effort, wanting to be so good, wanting to compete so bad, wanting to win so bad that, maybe went a little bit harder than usual. Some guys go soft when the going gets tough. Some guys go faster when the going gets tough. So, but anyway, the best draft I've ever had. And,
what do you remember? What do you remember about 2006 and picking Clayton Kershaw?
Well, everybody else who was selected before him was a college player, but we felt we had, and Logan White did a phenomenal job with it as well, and his staff. We felt that we had our best days were coming with younger players.
Okay.
So we were going to add to it. It's like when I traded for Andre Ethier. It was a college draft, but it wasn't in the big leagues. It was in AA.
Yeah.
But, we can add to this group, the Russell Martin group, the James Loney group, the Matt Kemp group, the Chad Billingsley, Jonathan Broxton group. We could add to that group with guys in their, quote, age group, their generation, so to speak. So we were fine with the high school draft. And we got a break. We got a break, what I wasn't here for, but we kind of benefited from it the next year because they drafted Luke Hochevar in 2005, the year they lost 91 games. That's the team I inherited, 91 lost Dodgers. You see 91 lost Dodgers, you think, well, that's over a year and a half, right? That was over 162 games. But Luke Hochevar was drafted by them, and he went back into the draft in Kershaw's draft, and he turned out to be the number 1 pick in the country. So what that did, if Luke Hochevar is a Dodger, everybody slides up one. We're not picking him. Maybe we pick Scherzer, maybe we pick Lincecum. Too hard to tell at this point in time. It's just a look back. But Hochevar going back in the draft was a domino effect and pushed everybody back one. And it pushed Clayton from perhaps a sixth pick to the 7th pick.
Yeah.
But, the start before the draft, I think he had a 5-inning game in Dallas at high school where he struck out every hitter he faced. So as we're thinking about this, we're thinking, oh, well, we really didn't need this,
Yeah.
He could have skipped the start. We were already convinced, but now everybody's going, he struck out everybody he faced. It's like, might be moving up somebody's board. But tremendous. And somebody whose effort never waned and whose trust for what you were going to get was there every day.
Yeah. When did you know? I mean, like you just mentioned a lot of guys who are very good baseball players. Matt Kemp won an MVP. Andre Ethier, incredible. Like Billingsley had moments. Broxton had moments. Like James Loney. Those were all like really good players to varying degrees. When did you know that Kershaw was different? That you were looking at an echelon of player that was different than maybe anybody you had seen before?
I think, I knew the compete was the highest I'd ever seen from a high school player.
Okay.
And I remember him coming to Dodger Stadium for the first time to sign. I think his mom was with him, and he was almost like a young colt. Okay, a lot of legs and trying to get himself situated physically and learn how to really work his body, but the compete was like, whoa, this is special. And then as time went on, you just saw that he was willing to he wanted so bad to get better. A lot of people are willing to get better.
Yeah.
Some don't have the talent to get much better.
Yeah.
But he had untapped talent, and he had the compete level that was off the chart. So we just kind of merged all of that, and he never wanted to settle for anything. I think that the no-hitter he had, which was one error by Hanley Ramirez away from being a perfect game. I'm not sure what his reaction would have been to the perfect game, because he was going to always try to be better than he had just been.
Yeah.
It was one of the greatest games anybody's ever seen pitch. 15 strikeouts, no walks, no hits. But I think as you got to probably 2009 and then 10, when he started to develop the command and could really dot and I, so to speak, you knew that this guy was going to be elite. You knew he was going to be first ballot Hall of Famer. I don't think anybody can predict that a year or two in. But as time went on, you just saw that he was somebody that was going to be as good as anybody who he competed against, and better than 95% of them on any given day.
Yeah.
And that's unique. That is special stuff.
Yeah. Is there a particular story that maybe you heard from somebody in the minor leagues, or a moment that you saw, maybe it was early in his major league career? Like, I'm just wondering if there's a conversation you had or something that was relayed to you where it was like, oh my goodness, like whatever our expectations were for this guy 5 minutes ago, they're different now.
I can't remember any specific conversation of that note. I recall the conversation when I sent them down.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
so
and he was disappointed, but I said, look, let's look a little bit analytically, a little bit on statistics here. The batting average against is hardly anything.
Yeah.
Okay. So what that tells me is your stuff is so good, they can't do much with it. But let's look at walks and strikeouts, and let's look at how many pitches per inning, and how many times we're getting somebody up in the bullpen in the 4th or the 5th. Let's look at that piece, and that's what I need you to kind of refine. I need you to be more efficient with your stuff, and kind of focus in and just be more efficient with it, because they're not going to hit you.
Yeah.
Very much. You're going to have a low batting average against. You're going to have a low batting average against, but because of the command, you're going to have a high whip. So we got to get both of those in the same place. And to his credit, I mean, he didn't like it, but he went down and worked on it. and came back and really had it at that point in time. I also acquired a guy named Greg Maddux at the end of the '06, then again at the end of '08, with the express purpose of sitting next to Kershaw. Greg Maddux is one of the best, maybe the best I've ever seen. Genius at what he did. Another high school draft that I was in Chicago when he was selected by the Cubs. Genius at what he did. And I thought anytime he has a conversation with Clayton, it's going to be a benefit. It's going to be a benefit to Clayton and the entire pitching staff and the entire organization. And so that was, Greg finished his career with LA. And that part of the reason we got him late in the year, part of the reason was, hey, not only can he, pitch and still can get guys out, but he can sit next to the next Hall of Famer coming through here.
Yeah.
And I think that is, that certainly didn't have any negative effect. I think it was all positive.
Do you think Greg understood? Like, I mean, being the genius that he was, like, how quickly did he figure out who he was sitting next to?
Oh, he knew. I mean, we all kind of knew, but again, it's, sometimes fans, media, we try to get ahead of the game to make the prediction, right? But the guys who play, they know immediately who's got what, who competes, who's gonna have the quest to become as great as they can become on a daily basis. Who's got that? And that was Clayton. And I think, Greg saw it early and knew. I mean, I've known Greg since he was Clayton. Like, I've known both since they were 18 years old. And Greg was, 23, 24 years in by the time, 08 rolled around. But he knew how special it was, and he wasn't going to be overbearing with them, but just in casual conversation. Greg Maddux has a PhD in the craft and the art of pitching.
Yeah.
So anytime you sit next to anybody with that type of bandwidth and experience and can read a situation, read a hitter's tendencies, know what was going on, man, he would predict different ways guys would get out. This guy's going to pop up behind third base foul. Watch, boom, there he did. I mean, different things like that it was going to be a benefit to Clayton.
Couple questions, and we'll get you out of here. Not only did you draft Clayton Kershaw, you also extended him. You gave him the biggest contract in Major League history, both in total dollars and per year salary, I believe. 7 years, $215 million back in 2014. Another thing that you did that has aged very well, Ned. I imagine that was not a hard decision to extend Clayton Kershaw. Was there any resistance within the organization to make him the highest paid player ever?
No, there was zero resistance, and candidly, I mean, I'd known him for a long time by then. I knew, as I've said about the effort and the quest for greatness, that wasn't going to go away because he suddenly started getting, close to 30 million a year, 31 million a year. That wasn't going anywhere. Sometimes you sign a player and the best year they'll ever had was the year before you signed them because now they're coasting to the finish line. He was never going to coast, but there was some, on my part, there was a little bit of hesitation because he's a pitcher.
Yeah.
And you're always one pitch away from, mailing a big check to the house, and so, a little bit of that, but, the market is what the market is. And you had Verlander, I think, and Hernandez in Seattle who had signed recently. And it was tough to argue that Clayton wasn't as good, if not better, and left-handed. And so, you do what you do. So, a little bit of thought to, wow, this is a long period of time. We're expecting really 210 plus starts for this, right?
Yeah.
And, is he going to be able to post for 210 starts? But, you could always find a reason to say no. That's why most trades are never made, because somebody can always find a reason to say no. I tried to find reasons to say yes. And in this case, there wasn't anybody who worked harder, anybody who was better, anybody who was going to pitch like he was making $1 and trying to still prove who he was and prove that he was one of the elites. So you go with that, and you live with how it goes, and that contract's been over about 4 years now, I think.
Yeah.
So
well, and he ended up. I was looking back on it. I had forgotten he actually opted out of it after 5 years and then extended. So you
Yes.
signed him to what it ultimately ended up being a 5-year deal. But to your point, basically 2016 was the only year in that 5-year stretch that he didn't make at least 26 starts. The ERA is 2.13, 1.69, 2.31, 2.73, 3.03. It's like pretty good, pretty good.
I'll give you one more little thing. I don't know if we got the time, but if we don't,
I've got as much time as you got, Ned.
Okay, I'll tell you one other dynamic to the story that people don't always put two and two together. He's represented by a tremendous agent, Casey Close. Casey Close is as smart as anybody and one of the best, and the kind of guy you could have really just a heart-to-heart conversation with. He was going to do the best for his client, no doubt, but he listened to reason. But he also had a guy named Zach Greinke, okay, who had signed with us the year before. So when I was chasing Zach Greinke, I had to remember that whatever I said and whatever my criteria was for doing what I did with Zach, Casey Close was going to remember this.
Yeah.
And so I had to be delicate with that conversation because you're talking about another elite pitcher. In my book, another Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So that came the year before. And, we had to be careful as to how we laid it out because whatever I was going to say regarding Zach, if I said, well, this is really good, we'll pay for this. This is the type of thing we pay for. The other guy had it too.
Yeah, totally.
So I had to be just a little bit careful with my choice of words because, as I say, Casey Close is one of the all-time greatest agents. You don't have Clayton for as long as he did, and Zach for as long as he did, and Derek Jeter for as long as he did, and on and on and on and on. He's one of the best. So, just a little bit of a side story there that people kind of forget as you spin through the years.
Yeah, I love it. Last question for you. Kind of tie all the pieces together. Dodgers bullpen and Clayton Kershaw. You mentioned you've sat in the chair when Kershaw's been forced into situations out of the bullpen that did not end the way that he or the Dodgers wanted to. And I'm not here to relitigate whether or not that was fair to him or whether he faltered or whether it was bad luck. But the Dodgers are going to be facing the same dilemma, which is Clayton Kershaw out of the bullpen. You mentioned his stuff still induces weak contact. He doesn't have the swing and miss stuff necessarily that you would want out of the bullpen. He lets the ball get put in play, which bad things can happen when that's the case. And yet the exit velocities, the hard hit rate, all of that remains very, very good for Kershaw. And so I'm curious, with the idea of Kershaw pitching out of the bullpen, knowing what you've been through personally, what you've seen and felt the weight of, and now in 2025, they're back to making the same decision of, are we going to trust Clayton Kershaw in a big spot out of the bullpen? What would you say to that?
Well, there's far more information today than there was, back in 2014 or previous to that. I don't have any doubt that there's matchups on every team that Clayton could excel with.
Yeah.
So it depends on how he feels about doing it. No doubt he's going to want to compete and play. A strong guess. I'm not him, but I think there's certain situations where he's going to be able to do what he's done all season long, and he's got the experience to do it, obviously, and still not the pure stuff where he can just throw it past you, but the art of pitching. So I think that they'll look at who they're playing and they'll look at the matchups and they'll look at how the other team approaches their lineup and see if there's going to be a spot or two that he can excel. Again, it goes back to putting your guys in a spot to be as good as they can be and to achieve success. So, I think there'll be spots for that.
Yeah.
One other thing about Clayton that I'm just shocked at is when you look at the ERA.
Yeah.
And, today, if somebody's got a 4.5 ERA, they go, oh my goodness, this guy's terrific. That's crazy. Even though batting averages are low, you got a bunch of guys hitting 220 or below on almost every lineup, but yet ERAs are 4.5. Not sure how that adds up. But as you look at what he's accomplished with the ERA, and it's phenomenal. But the number that jumps out at me more than anything is 96 losses. I think.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That he's pitched this long and posted as much as he did and was the workhorse and all those other things. And he hasn't lost 100 big league games in a regular season. Yeah. That to me, to be 120 some games over 500, find me another one.
Well, I mean, we did some of these stats the other night after his
Yeah.
final Dodger Stadium start. He's made 449 starts and has 96 losses. I believe this was prior to that game. That's 109 more starts than any other pitcher with less than 100 losses. He
Think
started
about
110 more times than any other pitcher with less than 100 losses.
that's 5
Um,
seasons.
yeah, it's crazy. There have been over 1,000 pitchers in MLB history to make at least 150 starts. Kershaw is the only player that was more likely to deliver a scoreless start than he was to suffer a loss. He had more scoreless starts than he did losses. Insane. He has the lowest ERA for any pitcher in the last 50 years, ERA plus. It's since the Cy Young, his 9 years since since the Cy Young in 2014, he's basically been just as good. And then this is the craziest one. If he allowed 146 earned runs to cross the plate without recording another out, his ERA would still be below 3. I don't know what I
Yeah.
mean. I don't know what you say. The thing I kept telling people, because there were Dodger fans that were like, "Hey, he's coming off injury. He's getting older. The velocity, is he still going to be able to do it?" And it's not like super analytical, but I always just came back to find me a time when Clayton Kershaw's arm worked right and he wasn't preventing runs. Like, find me a single moment at any point in his career when he wasn't able to prevent the other team from scoring. Which, look, I know we love strikeouts and we love all that. At the end of the day, the job is don't allow runs. He's done it better than any pitcher in Major League history. And so why anybody ever doubts this guy is beyond me.
I mean, those you just laid out an incredible career.
Yeah.
You couldn't, if you took the name off of that and you said, "This is what we're looking for," and you were
Yeah.
talking to baseball experts, people who do what you do, and people do what I do. If you just laid those numbers out and say, "This is the kind of guy we're looking for," they tell you, you're not gonna find that person. That person
Yeah.
doesn't exist. There's,
Right.
it's like hitting, 900 home runs, like
Right.
hitting 100 a year for 15 years. It doesn't it doesn't exist. He doesn't exist, but this guy exists.
Well, and you've said it a number of times. And I think what I've said as a Dodgers fan, as somebody who's just watched his career from afar as a fan, the beautiful thing about Kershaw was not just how good he was on the field. It's that how many guys can you say stayed with the organization for 18 years and never once caused them problems off of it? You never had to worry about what he was doing on a Thursday night or a Friday night, or that
Nope.
he was going to end up disrespecting the organization in some way. The fact that, as you said, he has made not only the community, the world a better place, and oh, by the way, might be one of the best pitchers of all time. I mean, that's why I think we are not just lucky, but some other word that's far greater than that.
Yeah, there's far more to him than what happens on the mound. You just mentioned something. I guess would be my final thought. Um, he's clustered with other pitchers in this era that are in the
Yeah.
same age group that are Hall of Famers. I'd be curious, and I think I know the answer, but I'd be curious to know what did he earn the last 5 years, and what did they earn the last 5 years?
Yeah.
And he had the um, humility or just the decency and approach to go like year to year
Yeah.
and leave his options open. But no doubt if he wanted a 4 or 5 year deal or a 3 year deal in a 20-30 million dollar range times 3 or 4, how are they going to say no, really?
Yeah.
But he never did that. You
Yeah.
can, uh, I'm not pointing anybody out specifically, but to play for what he's played for in the sunset, and it's been a long sunset, in a way.
Yeah.
Um, that to me is got so much class to it,
Yeah.
and just you know what he's not out to take advantage of anybody.
Totally.
He knows where he's at. He knows what he wants to do. He knows that that it'll help the team sign other players, perhaps. But I haven't done the math on this, but I think it'd be pretty one-sided if you took a handful of players in his age group, in his
Well,
era,
yeah.
so to speak,
Well,
and
you didn't
went,
name names. You didn't name names. I'll name a couple names. This is according to Spot Track career earnings through 2025. Alex Rodriguez is the number one highest earning player in Major League history. The two pitchers that I think he's most commonly grouped with would be Verlander and Scherzer, guys that are in the same age group. Verlander's been in the league since was drafted in 2004. Scherzer in 2006, like Kershaw. Verlander's second on this list with just over 409 million in career earnings. Scherzer is fourth on this list with $345 million in career earnings. Kershaw seventh on this list at 314. So he has made $30 million less than Scherzer, and he's made almost $100 million less than Justin Verlander. And no disrespect to those guys. Like, they good for them going and getting paid.
yeah.
But Kershaw made the decision, 18 years in one place. And to your point, he was with the Dodgers, the team that has unlimited checkbook. He could have pushed for more. He chose not to. And so I think that's a great landing spot by you.
Yeah, it's that'd be the guys you just mentioned. Like, what have they made the last 4 years?
Yeah,
And what has he made the last 4 years?
totally, absolutely.
I don't think if that website you're looking at's got year to year, but I'm guessing it's one sided.
Totally, yeah. I mean, Verlander made $68 million with the Mets. I believe that was a 2-year deal, and then he made $15 million with the Giants.
So you got 83 million?
Yeah, 83 million. So, and then Scherzer, it's a little harder to parse out, but yeah.
And
so,
what does Clayton earn?
Yeah, well, Clayton doesn't break it out because it's all with one team. So it's I'd have to go and look year by year. This stat just says here's what he made from each of the teams he's played for. So with Kershaw, it's very simple. It just says L.A. Dodgers, $315 million. So kudos to him. So that is Ned Colletti, former general manager of the Dodgers, the man who signed Clayton Kershaw
and sent him
to
down.
the biggest contract, drafted him, signed him, and maybe sent him down once in between. So
and great scouts. They knew who they had targeted. They knew what they were doing.
I love it. Well, we appreciate your time, Ned. Enjoy the rest of the season.
Yeah, Jeff.
And hopefully we can have you back on. Thanks everybody else for watching. Again, this is Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, go Dodgers.